Historically, equity developed as a separate system from the common law because the common law was often too rigid and too limited in the remedies it could offer. Whenever strict legal rules created an unfair outcome, people would petition the Lord Chancellor for a relief, and equity will step in to correct the injustice. From early decisions, the Chancery Court developed a set of guiding principles, what we now call as equitable maxims. These maxims express the general spirit and philosophy of equity. Unlike common law rules, equitable maxims are not strict. They do not operate like statutory provisions or any fixed legal tests. Instead, they function as a flexible standards of conscience. They remind the court to consider fairness, honesty, and good conscience when deciding whether to grant equitable remedies. One of the most important maxims is equity will not suffer a wrong without a remedy. This reflects equity's core purpose to ensure that no person is left without relief when they have suffered a genuine wrong. Sometimes the common law can't provide an adequate remedy, for example, when damages are insufficient or when the law don't recognize a particular type of right. In those situations, the equity fills the gap. This is where we get remedies such as injunctions, specific performance, constructive trust, and accounts of profit. The maxims will ensure that where there is a right, there will be a corresponding remedy. So another major maxim is he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. This principle emphasizes the discretionary nature of equitable relief. Even if someone has a legal or equitable right on paper, the court can refuse to help them if they have behaved unfairly or dishonestly in relation to the right. This protects the integrity of the court. It also prevents claimants from using equitable remedies to benefit from their own wrongdoing. In practice, this means the court may refuse a specific performance or an injunction if the claimant's conduct is tainted by fraud, misrepresentation, or other forms of unconscionability. Whether is remarkable is that these century-old maxims still play a very active role in Malaysian law. You can see them in areas like involving trust, land disputes, and equitable remedies. For example, even though Malaysia uses a torrent system under the National Land Code, equity still intervenes through doctrines like constructive trust and in personam exceptions to infeasibility, especially in cases involving fraud, broken promises, or unconscionable behavior. Maxim will help guide this intervention by balancing fairness with the need for certainty in land transactions. Equitable maxims also shape remedies. Many equitable remedies, such as recession, injunctions, and specific performance, depend on whether the claimant's conduct aligns with principles like clean hands and whether the claimant acted without unreasonable delay. So, overall, equitable maxims continue to play an important role because they give the court the flexibility to reach fair outcomes when strict legal rules are inadequate. They ensure that equity remains a living, adaptable system, one that supplements the common law and focuses on achieving justice for each individual. Our first maxim is equity will not suffer a wrong without a remedy. This maxim means that whenever the law recognizes a right, equity ensures there is a remedy to protect it. It originates from the Roman principle ubi jus ibi remedium, later adopted by the Chancery in the 17th century. Equity developed to fill the gap left by the rigid common law writ system and to prevent unjust enrichment by focusing on conscience rather than technicalities. An example we can look at is in the case of Rediplock, where estate funds were wrongly distributed and common law couldn't restore the money. So, equity stepped in to trace and recover any misapplied property, ensuring no wrongdoer or innocent recipient kept the benefits that they weren't entitled to. In the case of Bannister and Bannister, equity prevented the defendant from relying on formalities to evict a widow. Even without a contract, the court created a constructive trust to stop injustice. So for a Malaysian case, in the case of Takako Sakau and Ng Pek Gan, it shows that this maxim operating even under the torrent's indivisibility. The court used its personam jurisdiction to correct unjust enrichment and grant a fair remedy. So A modern example we can look at is a crypto exchange collapse. The common law struggles to trace mixed digital assets, but equity can impose a constructive trust and gives user the priority over general creditors. Overall, this maxim matters because it shows equity's remedial creativity and its ability to protect parties when strict legal rules would otherwise create injustice. The second maxim is he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. This means that anyone seeking an equitable remedy must show honest and fair conduct. The wrongdoing must be closely connected to the claim itself, and the purpose of the maxim is to protect the integrity of the court's conscience. We can look at the case of Tinsley and Milligan 1994. The House of Lords made it very clear that the clean hands doctrine applies only when the claimant's case depends on illegality. If the claimant can prove their right without relying on the illegal act, the equity may still assist them. In Fusing Construction and Eon Finance 2000, the Malaysian court refused relief because the trust itself arose from an illegal purpose. Equity will not enforce any arrangements founded on illegality. Similarly, we can look at the case of Shell and Lostock Garage 1976. Shell sought equitable relief despite previously engaging in inequitable and oppressive pricing conduct. The court refused relief, emphasizing that a claimant's own unfair behavior can bar equitable remedies. Critically, not every wrongdoing will bar relief. The misconduct must relate to the claim, but judicial discretion also makes outcome unpredictable. Many scholars argue that the doctrine should apply to serious wrongdoing only and should prevent unjustified advantage, not punishing minor mistakes. A modern example is a shareholder misrepresentation. If Mr. A lies to induce Mr. B's investment and later seeks specific performance for a share transfer, equity may deny that remedy because Mr. A's hands are unclean. The court might still award damages but refuse specific performance. This shows that how the clean hands doctrine doesn't erase rights but determines which remedies equity is willing to grant. Now, let's look at the maxim delay defeats equity. It also known as laches. This maxim simply means that equity only helps those who act promptly. If a claimant waits for too long and delay that causes prejudice to the defendant, the court can refuse equitable relief. Importantly, this doctrine is a distinct from statutory limitation. Latches can bar a claim even if the statutory limitation period has not expired, which shows how powerful and flexible this maxim is. A classic example is in the case of Elkhart and Skinner, where the claimant waited for years before challenging a transaction based on a undue influence. Even though the merits were strong, the court still refused a remedy because the delay made it unfair to reopen the case. Similarly, in the case of Ratnavale and Lordadane, the Malaysian Supreme Court denied relief because the defendant had been clearly prejudiced by the claimant's delay. We also see this maxim in a modern situation. Imagine a director secretly diverting company funds to a personal entity. If shareholders only discover the breach 8 years later, the statutory deadline might still allow litigation. But equity may refuse remedies because the evidence has gone stale and the third party rights have intervened and the defendant has changed their position. Critically, while this maxim protects fairness to defendants, it's also highly discretionary and can lead to unpredictability. It may also be harsh on claimants who genuinely could not discover the wrongdoing earlier. For this reason, many scholars argue that the doctrine should only apply where there is real, proven prejudice, not merely delay. Still, the underlying idea remains that equity aids the vigilant and not the indolent. So, in conclusion, equity will not suffer a wrongdoing without a remedy. The first one, it ensures that a remedy actually exists. This gives the court the creative power to construct the remedy that justice requires, especially in situations where strict legal rules leave a gap. This is also why equity can impose remedies like constructive trust, tracing, or accounts of profits. Its purpose is to make sure that rights are genuinely enforceable. The second one, he who comes to equity come with clean hands, filters who deserve that remedy. Even if a claimant has a valid right, equity evaluates their conduct. If they have acted dishonestly, the court may refuse to help them. This ensures that equitable relief is used not as a tool to profit from wrongdoing. It protects the integrity of the court's conscience and ensures that equitable remedies remains morally grounded. And the last one, delay defeats equities. It determines whether the remedy is still available. This maxim focuses on timing. If a claimant delays too long and the delay prejudices the defendant, court can refuse equitable claims. Even a strong claim can be defeated by unreasonable delay. It helps protect defendants, safeguard evidence, and preserve certainty in transactions. These three maxims show how equity functions. Create it creates remedies, the second one regulates who may access them, and the third limits when they can be granted. Because of that, equitable maxim remains a powerful tool in shaping modern justice. It provides a flexibility in situations where the rigid common law simply can't deliver a fair outcome. It is especially important today in cases involving trust, land disputes, digital assets, and commercial unfairness. In areas where real life situations are far too complex for strict rules alone. However, it's also very important to recognize that equitable maxims operate within limits. The court must balance between equitable discretion and statutory frameworks, and the right of defendants, evidence, and the need for certainty. Statutes like the NLC, limitation periods, and consumer protection rules all influence how far equity can go. So even though equity relies on conscience and fairness, it can't override legislations to create remedies that would undermine legal certainty.